when I read that book about gender and sexuality, I realized like this is enormously freeing and healing for everyone involved. It's
Mm.
what a great miracle that these very brave individuals have shared their truth with the world and really educated people about the binary and the enormous amount of freedom that you can have with your identity and your sexuality and all that kind of stuff, because it frees all of us, even if we seem to be okay-ish in the roles that we are, or even if we're very, very comfortable in the roles that we are.
Mm.
So I think it's such an enormous gift when people go, "This is who I am." Your gender identity, your sexual identity, your neurodivergence identity changes. Like the constant is you, and that's a beautiful and that's a precious thing.
Hello and welcome to the 50 Shades of Gender podcast. We get curious about all things gender, sex, and sexuality, as well as relationships, feminism, the inclusive kind, mental health and kink, and all that makes us humans unique and diverse. From body positivity to body dysmorphia, it's all welcome here. If you like what we do and want to make a contribution, you can become a patron on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/50 Shades of Gender or buy us a coffee. Links are on the website. Now, join us on a journey of inclusion, acceptance, and respect. I'm your host, Esther Lemons. I am a cis queer woman, and my pronouns are she and her. In this episode, I have a conversation with Leonie Dawson, a proudly neurodivergent, multi-passionate entrepreneur, author, podcaster, prolific course creator, and massive swearbear. Leonie's pronouns are she and they are non-binary. Find out what that means to Leonie in this episode. We also talk about honouring the land we inhabit, the freedom that came from adding a they pronoun while having a she experience, being non-conforming in business, the importance of having open and honest money conversations, knowing who you are inside and standing for what you believe in, kicking the social media habit, and smashing the patriarchy by being more of yourself. To clarify some terminology that is used in the episode, BIPOC is Black, Indigenous, and People of Colour. At one point, we talk about the Indigenous, Australian, Aboriginal, and Torres Strait Islander people's gender identities, sister girl and brother boy, and we got in a bit of a muddle. So I've looked into this subject further online to clarify things, and although, of course, the internet offers no guarantee of accuracy, I hope I do it justice. You can find links and resources on the episode page if you'd like to look into it further. As I understand it, these are inclusive terms, so sister girls and brother boys can be anywhere on the gender spectrum, or in the gender universe if you prefer a more 3D version. For example, a sister girl would have been assigned male at birth and may be a binary trans woman, or a trans feminine non-binary person, or a feminine gay man, etc., and they may take on female roles, quote unquote, in society and in their community. A brother boy would have been assigned female at birth and may be a binary trans man, or a trans masculine non-binary person, or a butch person, etc. And they may take on male roles, quote unquote, in society and in their community. These terms include gender identity as well as cultural identity, so they are interlinked and inseparable, and therefore any Western language for gender identities will not offer a completely accurate description. As with all gender identities, how a person experiences this is unique to each individual. If you are an Indigenous Australian and would like me to correct this or add to this in any way, I invite you to let me know. And if you are a brother boy or sister girl and would like to share your story on the podcast, please get in touch. I would love to hear from you. It was recorded on the 25th of October, 2021. Now let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome. What's your name?
Oh, hi, Esther. I'm Leonie Dawson.
Hello, Leonie. And normally I would ask you about your gender experience, but what I've learned from being on calls with Australians is to do an acknowledgement of the land and the people, which I really love. So would you please do the honours?
Oh, sure. I want to acknowledge that I live and work on the lands of the Gubbi Gubbi people here on the Sunshine Coast in Australia, and I want to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and future. And I want to acknowledge the traditional and ongoing custodians of the lands and seas where you are, wherever you're listening to this, where Esther lives. And if you don't know who those people are, have a quick Google because it's a really useful to find out the traditional owners of the land you are. Here in Australia, the Indigenous people say that it makes the land happy and the spirit of the land happy when you say the traditional lands. Plus, for racial justice issues, it's really important to acknowledge as well.
Totally. Yeah, I really love it. It's a great habit. I since looked up the situation of that here, and apparently it's the Celtic Britons or the Britanni of
Yes.
Great Britain. So
Yeah.
that was something I learned. So that's brilliant. Yeah, the first time I came across it was in the episode with Sally Goldner that I did, who was the first Australian that I spoke to for the pod. So you're the second one. So that's great. So yay. Yeah. So tell me a bit about your gender experience. What labels you use, how that came about.
Sure.
Feel free to, yeah.
My pronouns are she or they. I'm comfortable with both. For me, I'm somebody who's diagnosed with autism and ADHD, and for people who have autism particularly, we tend to be much more gender non-conforming and don't sit as well in the gender binary as maybe neurotypical people do. For my sense, and this is my experience, is that our identity first is of being ourselves. And
Mm.
our body's just the thing that we happen to land in. And we're like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing this. Um,
Yeah.
So for
Yeah.
me, it's always been I'm Leonie first, and then the body I'm in it just happens to be the body that I'm in. When I was a kid, I absolutely really wanted to be a boy, for the
Right.
very specific reasons that I felt that their hobbies were more of an alignment with mine. I was not a kind of a princessy kind of girl. I was very much a tomboy, and I lived on a farm, and I just ran wild with the horses and the dogs. And I liked that boys got to do cool shit, and I didn't like the idea of the whole girl experience. I was like, "Ugh, I think I'd prefer to be a boy." Having said that, I didn't really have any
Yeah.
like I didn't really have much body dysphoria. Um,
Mm.
so I just kind of carried on with it and
Yeah.
have I think in some ways my like because I'm a mum now and I've given birth and gone through that a very unique experience of like this is a person with a uterus and boobs and going through this birthy experience. I feel like,
Yeah.
I think I've kind of earned the she in a little way just because I've gone through that experience in some ways. I don't know how to
Right.
explain it. It feels like that kind of experience. And I know that people of other genders can give birth and breastfeed,
Yeah.
but it just feels like well, in some ways, I'm definitely a she because I'm. Yeah,
Yeah, you did that.
I did
Yeah,
that.
you did that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what was it like? Well, being pregnant, giving birth for you with your idea of gender. Did you feel like it was just a bit odd, or was it just like, okay, this is something my body can do, so let's just do this thing? you know?
Oh, good. I
Yeah.
think my experience was definitely that it was odd, and
Mm.
probably a few competing interests in that were one autism. It's tricky when you've got a body that totally is changing, and you're like, "What the actual fuck? This is very strange."
Yeah.
It definitely feels like there's an alien inside me. And
Mm.
also I get very, very ill during pregnancy, so it
Oh,
it
yeah.
feels like a very shit experience for me anyway.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've not experienced it. It's not something I've ever desired to do. So there you go. But yeah, it must be an interesting one. Wow. Yeah. I was actually thinking of one of the calls we were on for your course. You said something about if you don't I can cut this out if you're
Oh,
not
no,
okay with
that's
it.
fine, go
But
for it.
like you were joking about childbirth and you were saying to your husband like next time you're coming back with the woman parts. We're just going to swap. And I
Big
found that really
time,
funny.
big time, like, I am
Oh.
gonna be the dude next time, okay? And you're the Sheila, and that's just how it's gonna be. We had a go at doing it this time, this round, like this. Next time, I think we should try differently. And also, like, in terms of everything, like, I do feel like I have a much more masculine brain to my husband. We when we have arguments, they're traditionally like arguments that you would hear with reverse gender. So my husband wants to talk about his feelings all the time. I have no
Yeah.
interest. I'm like, I'm watching TV right now. Can we not discuss this? Like, I just want to watch some more TV. And I just have this very like, I'll just problem solve all of his problems. He doesn't want to be heard. He wants me to like solve his problems. And he's like, no, I just
Interesting.
want to be heard. So, yes, we do have a kind of
Atypical.
atypical, yeah, in
Yeah.
lots of ways, and I love it. It's perfect, but it doesn't
Yeah.
fall in those strict gender
Well, it
roles.
fits, I
Yeah,
guess. It fits together. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah. So you mentioned gender non-conforming. You've also mentioned the term non-binary. So what does that mean to you?
Oh, non-binary. Well, for me, it's like recognizing that female and male are not the only genders, and and it's not a or situation. And
Hmm.
when you look at it, it's much more that continuum in many
Mm.
ways. And even when you look at, like, I looked at the science of how a gender is assigned. It's not just one thing or the other. It's kind of, there's a whole range of things that build up to it, and knowing as well that there's millions of people that are intersex in the world as well. Well, that
Hmm.
have either no sexual organs or both sexual organs, or have presented as female and also happen to have testicles inside their stomach. And it's like an amazingly diverse population. And I think we've just been so pushed by the patriarchy and
Mm.
capitalism to believing that this is the only two ways, and yet across all cultures and all of history there's this recognition, like, fucking no.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Do you have any connection with like the indigenous side of things as well? Like, do you have any idea of gender and identities in that way
Yeah, well,
when it comes to,
here in
yeah.
Australia it's fascinating because they they do recognize third gender, and they have the sister boy population, which are trans women. And I just did some reading about the brother girl population as well. So that's trans men. And there is an island in Australia that is mostly indigenous, and the percent of sister boys is enormous. It's basically a population of sister girls. It is the coolest thing ever. It's
Wow.
the
Wow.
coolest. And also because I think, kids who aren't fitting in will then move there as well. But even the people that are born there, there's just a very high population of sister girls, of
Ah,
trans men.
okay. Ah, yeah, yeah. So you said initially sister. Well, I just want to make sure I get this right. So was it it's sister girls
Yes,
and brother
that's a sis.
boys?
I think I've got the terminology for the girls wrong. Sorry. So
Right.
it's for the boy, whatever. What do you mean, brother boys? It will probably be brother boys. So it's sister
Yeah.
girls for trans men.
Right.
Yeah, and they have a very large percent of the population that are
Interesting.
sister boys.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd love to have more indigenous folks on the podcast as well, which is something I'm working on. I've spoken to a two-spirit woman.
Oh,
That
wow.
was really interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't realize that two-spirit is sort of like not like 100%. It's like really tricky to define these terms like in just simple like, oh, this is this. But yes, like two-spirit is apparently more of an umbrella term, more for LGBT rather than because it includes sex and gender, or like gender and sexuality, and all
Right.
those things. So yeah, I found that really fascinating. So I'd love to learn more about that. So yeah, as for your gender journey, how did it develop? So you said as a child you didn't really feel like you weren't really a girly girl; you were more of a tomboy.
Mm.
And what was it like in as a teenager and growing up and stuff like that?
For me, I remember when I hit 13 or 14 and realized, like, oh, like, I'm supposed to be doing beauty things, apparently. And I would like study these, like the teen magazines, like there were manuals, right? And this is a very autistic thing to do. Like, I shall study up on how to be a teen woman. Um, and I remember reading in one of them like this this outline of a Sunday beauty routine, like your weekly beauty routine. And I was like, huh, well, I am becoming a woman. I must do this. And so, like, one Sunday
Mhm.
afternoon, I follow the checklist that they have in there. Like, how my parents didn't know I was fucking autistic, I have no clue. I was a late diagnosis. But looking back, very strange behavior. Ticking off my little checklist of how to be a woman. And so I made like this honey and oatmeal mask that I put on there, and did deep conditioning of my hair and shaved all my hair and scrubbed my body. And then at the end of all this, 3 hours later, I, looked at myself in the mirror and I looked exactly the fucking same, except I kind of looked hot and flushed and I smelt still like honey. And that would never, like, come off. And I
Yeah.
was like, I don't look any different. I look kind of worse. What a fucking waste of time. I could
Yeah, why
have
bother?
been riding my horse. I could have been reading a book. I could have been doing anything but this. So that's when I just kind of gave up on the whole beauty thing. I thought, nah, not for me. It's a bit of a time suck. It's not a productive use of time. I think I'll be happier just focusing on other things.
Yeah.
So that was great. I'm glad I learned it early.
Mhm.
By about that time as well, I discovered that I was very much a late comer to friendships. I was probably 10 or 11 before I worked out how to make a friend. Again, autism. And it was with girls originally. And then by the time they got to be about 13, I was like, this is a little too much. Like, this
Mhm.
whole level of emotional drama, no, thank you. I don't understand this whatsoever. I don't get it. So
Mhm.
I would, as the young people say, yeeted out of that situation and I went and found some boys to hang out with. And I just hung out with boys for the rest of high school. It was great. They were
Yeah.
very much, much more simple. And I appreciate that experience completely.
Mm. Yeah, that's so interesting. I feel like I'm I'm not diagnosed or anything, but I feel like the more I learn about neurodivergence, the more I'm like, oh, you
Ah,
know, you know,
yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally, totally.
That's how I found out I was autistic, is that all my friends were getting diagnosed, and I was like, "What? They're the coolest people I've ever met. They're the only people actually understand." And then I was like, "You know what? To be a good friend, I'll go read a checklist of what again, a checklist,
Yeah,
fuck me,
yeah, right.
of what that's
Yeah.
about." And then I,
Mm.
like, read the checklist, especially about the how it appears in females, because it presents completely differently in females than it does in the blokes. And I
Mhm.
that was the same realization I had, like, "Oh,
Mhm.
I see. I see me and my whole life and everything and all my little quirks. They're just a fucking checklist."
Yeah, all explained. Yeah, it's right there.
Amazing.
Yeah. So when did you actually come across the term non-binary?
Ooh, I love reading graphic novels.
Mhm.
And I love to read like graphic nonfiction as well. So comic books that illustrate a subject. And so I read, they've got a whole series out now. They've got, it's by Meg John Barker
Mhm.
and somebody, Julia Steele, I think. So they read, it was queer, a graphic history, and then they've got gender, a
Mm.
graphic history as well. And I can't remember. It's one of those books, and they're both phenomenal. I've got both of them, and
Mm.
I've pre-ordered the next one. But basically, they go through a whole history of it, and it's like a little bit like reading a university textbook about it in some ways, but it's so much more accessible and easy to read. And so reading about the history of gender and how it was constructed and all like the vast amount of experiences, it absolutely blew my mind. And I thought, oh, it's me. Like this whole gender non-conforming thing, it's me. I've never conformed and I don't want to conform. And I also don't have to. And I don't like I'm not going to fall in strictly one category or the other. And I know this is super strange, but I didn't recognize at that point that gender and sexuality were completely different as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Had no fucking clue.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was great to get that 101. And I was like, huh, it me. Hooray.
I love it. Yeah, I had heard of those books actually. I haven't got them yet, but it sounds right up my street, so I might have to
They're
give them a look as well.
awesome. You will just love them.
Yeah. Do you feel like your gender and like what you said in the beginning, there's basically just Leonie, really. That's it. So there's different facets of this identity diamond, as it were. So like gender is one of them, and you say, I guess, neurodivergence is another. Do you feel like it influenced what you've done with your life in a way of like being on an entrepreneurial journey, I guess, which is kind of a non-conforming thing to do in a business sense, because most people get jobs, I guess,
Yes.
Yeah. So how does that fit together for you?
I think it does come back to just the whole, just be Leonie. Whatever that is,
Mm.
like that is your identity. And, when I did get diagnosed finally with autism, like I felt like I was having a little bit of a head fuck, like, what is me and what is actually like the autism here? And my husband said, like,
Mm.
Leonie, I want you to know, like, that's great if this diagnosis has been helpful to you. But what I want you to know first and foremost is you're Leonie. And like, you've always been Leonie, and it's the reason I love you. And you're always going to be Leonie. That's always going to be constant. The autism is just like part of that constellation, but it's not the like the reason for it. Um,
Mm.
and I feel like that's such a beautiful sentiment. Like he is so reassuring in so
Mm.
many ways. Like it's okay if like your your gender identity, your sexual identity, your neurodivergence identity changes. Like the constant is you, and that's a beautiful and that's a precious thing.
Mm. Yeah. So with it potentially changing, do you feel quite comfortable in being non-binary? Do you feel like you might try on some different labels for size as you go along? Hard to predict, I
Oh,
guess, but
for
like,
sure. Anything that
yeah,
feels like a better fit, cool beans. I'm in. Because I
yeah.
was pretty happy. Like I was okay with the pronoun of she, but I was also like it was a little bit like it felt like a mask in some ways. It's sort of like,
Ah.
yeah, okay, well, I guess you can call me that, but it doesn't really encompass the whole thing. And I love that I
Mm.
can just say it's a she or they now because they for me is like the great mystery, the unknowing, like identity first. And when I realized, when I read that book about gender and sexuality, I realized like this is enormously freeing and healing for everyone involved. It's
Mm.
what a great miracle that these very brave individuals have shared their truth with the world and really educated people about the binary and the enormous amount of freedom that you can have with your identity and your sexuality and all that kind of stuff because it frees all of us, even if we seem to be okay ish in the roles that we are, or even if we're very, very comfortable in the roles that we are.
Mm.
So I think it's such an enormous gift when people go, this is who I am. And it gives people freedom to be even more of themselves. And I also
Mm.
felt very strongly like, holy shit, this is the way to heal the patriarchy.
Yeah. Right? Yeah,
Because
totally.
if you actually don't really know the gender of people, right, then the patriarchy can't actually work anymore properly. Like it's,
Mm.
and if that makes sense, like we actually, like if somebody's just like, I'm they or them, and you're like, Can't tell. Can't tell. All of a sudden, the patriarchy is sort of like, guess I'm going to have to afford the male privilege, and guess I'm just going to have to. I like just look at their achievements and their aspects as an individual,
Oh no.
and then that can
Yeah.
spread outwards to encompass the female genders as well. That'll just really fuck up that patriarchy.
Ah, totally. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if men can rid themselves of this toxic masculinity as well, because
Hmm.
it damages them
It
completely.
damages everyone, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah,
It does.
totally.
And,
Yeah.
it's, there's a reason why the suicide rate for men is so high. It's,
Hmm.
it's far higher than for females. And that's a patriarchy at play too. If somebody
Mm.
gets told over and over again, you're not allowed to feel your feelings, they will blow up, they will be abusive, they will not be able to contain all of the stuff that's inside them anymore.
Mm.
And some of them won't want to live. Like, that is fucking devastating. It's fucking
Mm.
devastating. Like, we need to allow blokes to be weak and fragile and not know what to do, and be terrified and to cry and to feel all of their feelings because it's fucking toxic that they can't. So we need to
Absolutely.
smash the
Yeah.
patriarchy in those ways too. And dig ding 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 ding.
Totally. Yeah. So there's a lot of freedom in like adding the they pronoun,
Yeah.
you feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That makes a lot of sense.
it's
Yeah.
a more accurate representation. Like, I
Hmm.
would say that my birth pronoun is they, and I'm adding in the she because I've had a she experience. So yeah, let's give it a
Wow.
nod to that.
Yeah. Oh God, that's so insightful. I hadn't thought of that. That's so cool. I love that. I've been playing with the idea of adding they as well, using she, they pronouns. And I especially love when I talk to people who use them interchangeably,
Mm.
because that can really fuck with people's heads. I mean, it can be confusing as well, obviously, but yeah, I quite like that. I do like that.
And I
Yeah.
feel as well, right? One, this is how I feel. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like I'm an alien that's an alien there who's come into the world and being like, huh, I got tits. Okay, let's do this. Um, so she or they. But by being out and proud about them, I just want to try and make it a little bit easier for somebody else to be able to consider their own gender
Mm,
and sexual experience as well. Like,
mm,
for them to know, like, you're safe with me. Like, I
yeah,
I get it, and I'm here for you, and I'm trying desperately not to fuck it up. And if I can, like, push the needle just a tiny bit further with by sharing my experience publicly, then I'm very happy to do that. Like, and
totally.
honestly, when I shared about, like, trigger warning, when I shared about it publicly with my mailing list,
Hmm.
I was like, hey, just letting you know, this is my pronouns now. I am not ready. I don't want to share about the personal journey as to why I'm choosing this, and I actually don't owe it to anyone. I may
Mm,
share about it, like, in depth in the future, but I also may not. Like, I'm just letting you know these are my pronouns. And
mm,
also, if you have some 1950s bullshit going on in your head, don't bother emailing me back. Don't bother with sending
mm.
me your bullshit, because one, I'm not going to read it like my assistants are, and they'll just delete it and they'll block you and unsubscribe you from all my mailing lists, and you won't be able to buy any of my programs because I don't allow for fuckheads to buy from me. Um,
Ah, that is
and
so good. Yeah.
secondly, I want you to know that your attitudes and your opinions have very real consequences on the
Mm,
LGBTQIA plus community, and that the
mm,
suicide rates for people with it are so much higher. And so I need you to understand that your words are deeply hurtful to this community. So don't
mm,
bother replying back. So I was very clear and I was very boundaried in that. I
mm.
got an amazing amount of emails that was very supportive, very cool, awesome,
Yeah.
beautiful. Other people who were like, fuck yes, me too, I'm so grateful. And then I got some people who but like, you know what? I'm just going to email Leonie some toxic bullshit anyway. And I
God.
thought, what the fuck
Yeah.
is wrong with you? What the fuck
Mm.
is wrong with you? And the blessing
Yeah.
is, like, I have very high self confidence and I am like unshakable really in who I am. And
Mm.
I thought, I'm so glad that I'm copying this abuse and not somebody who's actually like who's vulnerable and scared.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
But it also made me devastated that there are people who are just going to be copying this abuse and they're vulnerable and they're scared. Like that
Yeah.
sucks. That
Mhm.
absolutely sucks. And even if you've boundaried someone so clearly and said, actually, your opinion is not valid in this situation and it's
Mhm.
toxic and this is the harm it causes, they're still going to choose to do it. It really broke my heart that week. And it also broke,
Yeah.
like I've got two assistants and they're just absolutely brilliant and beautiful. And it broke their hearts as well.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah, it's like double bad, isn't it? If you've said, "Look, I don't need this shit from you, so don't bother." And then there's people who do it anyway. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you, you know?
Yeah. When I very
Yeah.
clearly said,
Yeah.
don't like, and
Yeah.
why not? And why it has bad impact? Why
Yeah.
no? And
Yeah.
they've continued to anyway.
Yeah. I'm really impressed with those boundaries, actually. Something I'm learning a lot about at the moment at this stage in my life. So did you find you had a lot of unsubscribes then? People who maybe were like, okay, this is not for me, and just
Oh,
did you notice the stats in that?
no, not really. I never like look at the stats
Didn't pay attention.
because,
No.
well, here's what I've learned after many years of having sometimes controversial opinions on the internet, is that when people get really fucking pissed off, there's going to be a bunch that unsubscribe, and I am like,
Mhm.
good, because you absolutely don't belong in my space. And when I teach courses, I'm always going to like weave through social and racial justice issues where I see fit into programs. And
Mm.
if it's an important thing, I'll bring it up. Or even if it's not an important thing, I'll probably mention it in a Q&A call, because
Yeah.
why not?
Yeah.
Like, why not have that chance to like educate people into learning a little bit more how to do better? So there's always going to be like this natural attrition. It's like I've come out very strongly in my mailing list against Trump, and I had a massive, quite a few people unsubscribed, but I don't notice, because when I have the inner courage to do that, the right people on my mailing list will go, hey, you should really listen to this chick. This chick is on our side. This chick gets it. This chick
Mm.
is for us. And so my mailing list grows on the other hand. So it's this natural attrition.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
so it like people who aren't the right fit for me right now will leave, and people who are much more aligned with me will.
Yeah, that's a thing at the moment, isn't it? Like lots of people are just coming off the fence with stuff and not necessarily taking sides, but just standing for something that they
Mm,
believe in.
yeah.
And yeah, it creates a lot of separation, I think, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, obviously. Yeah.
No, yeah,
Mm.
not really. Like, and
Mm.
I'm always truth be told, like my personal experience is that sometimes I'm quite disappointed when people that have platforms don't
Mm.
use it for good,
Yeah.
and don't use it to say very clearly what they're for and what they're not for. So
Mm.
I'm pro vaccination, I'm pro science, I'm pro taking good and rational decisions to prevent the loss of life because of COVID. Um,
Mm.
And so for somebody who is a conspiracy theorist or into QAnon or into like, railing against public health
Mm.
measures, not the right fit. Like I'm
Mm.
going to piss you off and you're going to piss me off. So prefer not. Prefer not. And it's even on my sales pages. It says if you're into QAnon or conspiracy theories, like, incorrect. No,
Yeah.
don't buy. It's not for you. And like on some level, right? There's this theory like, oh, you should just embrace everybody. Like, well, no, because these people are going to absolutely hate what I talk about.
Yeah.
And I don't have the time and energy for it. And I kind of ascribe to the belief that they need to have a consequence for their behaviors. And the consequence is I actually don't teach people,
Yeah.
and if there's enough people who have a bit of a consequence for doing harmful actions, maybe they might have a little rethink. They might have a little rethink. Like here in
Yeah.
Australia, the Australian government, like we have used lockdowns to prevent COVID
Yeah.
outbreaks, and it's challenging in its own ways, but I'm also very,
Mm.
very grateful because we've had fuck all deaths in comparison to the rest of the world.
Mm.
And most parts of the year, apart from Melbourne, we've been able to live like a COVID-free life and just go about and do things that other countries have not been able to do. The last
Mm.
18 months have been very different here in Australia than other countries. And completely forgot where I was going with that. Oh, no, I know. So now that the vaccine is out, the government's like, well, if you get vaccinated, you will be allowed to, you know, go out to
Mm.
restaurants and sit and, have things that
Mm.
we may not have been able to have so much over the last year. And I think that's really useful for people to have consequences for their behavior. It's sort of like the whole seatbelt policy. You've got
Mm.
consequences if you don't put a fucking seatbelt on to protect your life and to protect other people's lives.
Mm. Yeah. Let me just think where to take this next.
Oh yeah, it's got nothing to do with gender, but there we go.
That's
Pandemic
okay.
rant of
No.
the century, right? Like how like it's always gonna come back to COVID currently.
Well, it's kind of a, it's a current affair.
It is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I was another thing I wanted to talk to you about actually is like being successful and like definitions of success and the importance of talking about success and money and having it, and especially with people and by people who are either minorities or marginalized, the importance of talking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Is that something you're quite outspoken about as well?
Absolutely. So, and I teach about this in money manifesting and multiple streams of
Mm.
income, which is my money program. But women and Black, Indigenous, and people of color and LGBTQIA plus people have
Mm.
all been really prevented from being able to have their own wealth for
Mm.
centuries. And
Mm.
the only way that capitalism, like the only people that capitalism has really benefited is straight white dudes. Everyone else
Mm.
is like,
True.
eh. And so it's really important for us who don't fit in that particular subsect of population to talk about money, because that's the way that we improve our financial education. That's the way that we become the holder and the bearer of our own destiny.
Mm.
And we learn about, especially for us kind of more female orientated folk, we learn through talking to our best mates about stuff, really. We
Mm.
learn through conversation, and money shouldn't be excluded from that conversation either. So I
Mm.
love when I meet up with friends and I'm like, how's your net worth going? You know, and what are you investing in these days? And actually having those real, like, open and honest conversations with people, because it's
Mm.
absolutely fucking fascinating. And I don't understand why it's
Yeah.
such a taboo topic when it can be so useful. Actually, you know what? I know why it's a taboo topic. It's a taboo topic for women and
Mm.
BIPOC, and it's not a taboo topic for the straight white dudes. They go to golf
Mm.
and like talk about money, so we should not be
Yeah,
denied that conversation.
totally. I think it'd be really healthy to talk about it more because then they can't get away with so much nonsense about paying less to certain people because of what genitals they have, right?
Eh, yeah,
Yeah.
right. That, all of that. And then for people to go, oh, that's what you earn for that? Okay. Great. That's what I should be earning.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. Is there anything that you'd like to mention that we haven't talked about yet? Sort of
Oh,
bringing it all together, maybe? Because, like, I love the unique approach that is like we've all got our individuality, and it's great to embrace it, especially if it differs from the norm. I think it's more difficult, more challenging, but I think definitely more rewarding, isn't it? I would say.
I think so. And
Mm.
like where I'm at, like I don't really feel like I have much to lose
Mm,
from being open about my various journeys in whatever. I think it's useful for a lot of people. I think it's helpful and healing for other people. If it can push the
mm,
conversation a little bit further, great, great.
mm,
And if I get some kickback from it, oh well, because you know, I'm a tough cookie, and I don't fucking care. I don't fucking care what people think because I know who
mm,
I am on the inside. Um,
mhm,
and that's what it's why I share about my autism experience as well, because it's going to help so many people. It already has helped so many people go, oh, it's me. Finally,
yeah,
everything makes sense. And when you
yeah,
realize that, like, there's nothing actually wrong with you, it's just
mm,
that, like, it's just a little piece of missing information that's going to open the whole world up for you. That's how I see gender. That's how I see neurodiversity.
mm,
That's how I see all of
yeah,
it. Front out and be all of you, and other people might go, "Oh, me also."
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's just about bringing it all together, really, and integrating it and just being who you are in the end, accepting all of who you are. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and I
yeah.
also recognize that I'm in a safe place to do that, really. I know
Mm,
that other people aren't,
mhm.
and I just want you to know that, like, we're all cheering you on and hope that you can find that safety in whatever ways is right for you.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, one thing I was just thinking about is one of your courses. You talk about investing, and I think if we just allowed ourselves to be more comfortable and actually practiced, having these conversations and stuff, and thinking about the good we could do if more money were in the hands of like marginalized or minority groups,
Mm,
like world would fucking change overnight, wouldn't it?
it does.
um totally would, yeah. And you do something like, is it ethical investment
Yeah.
funds?
Yes.
Yeah, I was fascinated by it. I was like, oh, this is great.
It's so
Yeah.
exciting. So when you look at the statistics, women, when they have money, are the highest philanthropists in the world. They donate
Mm,
so much more of their money and make so much more traction with it than
mm,
dudes. And dudes will just spend it on themselves, and females will invest it back into their families, into like their children, their education, their communities, and through
mm,
philanthropic donations as well. So
mm-hmm,
I want to make sure that I align my money where my mouth is. So one part of that is we donate every single year to charities. We've done awesome fun things like we've built a library in Vietnam through Room to Read. We helped to build a
mm-hmm.
6-room school in Ghana in West Africa through Pencils of Promise. And that was a bunch of friends and me, and we just got a bit bored and we're like, fuck it. Let's make some money and build a school. So that's what we did over a month.
Amazing.
Yeah, we were a bit bored. So that's what chicks do when they get bored. Um, and donated $45,000 to a Kenyan children's organization. And now, because of the climate crisis, we donate our funds to directly fighting the climate crisis. So about
Mm,
$25 to $30,000 a year to places like Australian Wildlife Conservancy that buys up land for wildlife, which I just think is the coolest fucking thing since sliced bread. Um,
mm,
and creates, preserves these ecosystems and then creates these, like, I think that's part of the climate, solution is to make sure that there's these areas that natural habitat, and also to like Friends of the Earth who do more advocacy to try and
mm,
push for legislative changes, because here in Australia we have a conservative government in place currently that are not really pushing for, like, you know I think they're currently arguing about zero emissions by 2050. And we're like, fucking really? Like, you're arguing over this? Can we not talk about 2030 instead or something, plus?
mm.
So, anyway, step by step. So,
Yeah.
that's what I push for with
Mm,
the donations. And then when it comes to what we actually invest our money in, for our own personal wealth, is I had money in shares, but then I was like, "Oh, I don't feel great about this."
Mm.
Because some of those shares are like in shit situation, like that, like in shit companies,
Mm.
especially in your superannuation. You don't actually have any choice over, like for your retirement funds, you don't have choice over where it's getting invested. And so it can be invested in mining and gambling and warfare and, you know,
Mm.
polluters, the big polluters. And
Mm.
so swapping our retirement funds and our shares into ethical managed funds and ethical superannuation instead was very exciting to us. So we made that switch. It was
Mm.
so easy. I can't believe how easy it was. Literally took me 2 minutes online to move all our retirement funds over.
Wow.
They've performed really, really well. They're usually outperforming normal retirement funds. Talk to a financial
Mm.
advisor about this, but they've
Yeah.
performed amazingly well.
Disclaimer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
disclaimer.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
it was brilliant. So we use a company called Australian Ethical, and they do superannuation and managed funds. And managed funds is basically you're buying shares in lots of different companies. You're not just buying shares in one
Mm.
company. And
Yeah.
it's like how superannuation works, except you can access it at any time. Yet.
It was so interesting though to learn more about that because you've got I think is it your cheapest course? It's like $7 now, isn't it?
Yes,
Like the
yeah,
behind the scenes of the
of
yeah.
my finances. Yeah, I go to a
Yeah,
deep
yeah.
dive into my finances.
Yeah, and I think it's really great for people to look into that, and it's like it expands your money mindset as well. Like looking
Exactly.
at what would you do with this money if you had this money? Like
Mm.
what would you actually do with it? Besides live a good life, I guess, and have the essentials in place. But like, yeah, all the other stuff you could do. It's just really useful, I think.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
useful to like inspire people into like this is possible. This is
Hmm.
what you could be
Totally.
doing. And also when you have spare funds, you can do anything you like with it. You
Hmm.
some people, like, I completely acknowledge the fact that sometimes people are going to get very triggered by the amount of money that I earn and then the amount of money I donate and all that kind of stuff as
Hmm.
well. But I think it's useful for people to be triggered because maybe it'll help them look inside them for why they're
Hmm.
being triggered. Maybe they're jealous. Maybe they feel like I should be donating in a different direction or they should be donating more or whatever. And that's totally cool. It's absolutely okay
Hmm.
for you to have those triggers and for you to recognize that's cool. I'm just doing it my way and I'm just sharing what I'm doing.
Hmm.
And you can do it completely differently to me. You can
Hmm.
have like set up a company where 50% of your profits go to this, and that would be amazing. I can't wait to see you create that. That's so great.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So where can people find you online?
Oh, well, there's only one place because I gave up social media at the start
Ah,
of this year
yeah.
and it was amazing. Loved it.
Yeah.
So my website's leoniedawson.com. I have heaps of free shit on there. Um, for people who want to start and build businesses or just want to become more creative or
Mm,
want to really take control of their money and all that glorious shit. It's all
mm.
there. It's all there for you, my loves.
Awesome. Yeah, so you said you quit social media. I mean, it's been a good thing that you've not been tempted to go back.
Why would I be tempted to go back? It sucked.
I don't
Um,
know.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I thought I'd do it for 21 days just to, as a palate cleanse. And then
Mhm.
within a couple of days of going off it, I was like, I'm actually never going back. My inner peace is
Mm.
restored. I feel like myself again. I feel so much more creative and productive than I have in years. And
Yeah.
I thought, like, I'd really grieved that I thought that part of my life was over, the life before the internet began, like that quiet space in my mind. But then I
Mm.
discovered it's actually not about the internet at all. It's about social media. And
Mm.
social media is such a new invention. And so they're only
Yeah.
now just having longitudinal studies of the effects on brain and self confidence and health and all that kind of stuff. And spoiler alert, it's fucking not good. It's really not good. It
Yeah.
actually erodes your capacity to have short term and long term memories, and it affects every single area of your mental health and your ability to sleep and your
Wow.
neuroticism and your anxiety levels and your depression and how you perceive yourself. Uh,
Mm.
all of the fucking things,
Yeah.
it's bad. Like, it is absolutely smoking but worse. It is smoking but worse. Um,
Wow.
and so as I like researched this more and more, and I read some fantastic books like Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport and How to Break Up with Your Phone by Catherine Price. And I thought I want to forge a new future for myself that doesn't have social media. I genuinely have not missed it. And here's the thing, right?
Mm.
Like, the latest studies is that Americans spend 2.5 hours on their phones and on social media every single day. Two and a
Mm.
half hours a day is enormous. It's
Mhm.
enormous. That is a part-time job. That is, you're looking at 16
That's
hours a
right.
week. What could you be
Yeah.
doing with 16 hours a week?
Oh,
You could
wow.
take up a whole hobby. You could study part-time at university. You could legitimately, like, have a part-time job in that time.
Yeah.
You could be making so much
Yeah.
more money. You could be getting so much fitter. Like, there's no gain with social media. There's this
Mm.
idea that, oh, but I'll stay more connected. No, I'm actually more connected with my friends now than I was with social media.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah. I was just thinking about how I'm going to be sharing this episode on social media, but okay.
Oh, it totally happens. And like,
Yeah.
it took a while for me to
Uh,
wean myself off and also consider like how my
mm.
business was going to work without it, because
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
we bring in over $1 million a year with my business, and it's an online business. And I was like, how the fuck can I get my business off social media? And we
Mm.
did, and it's done really well. And so much so
Yeah.
people asked me so much because people are all like,
Yeah.
I really want to leave social media. So I created a new course
I
called,
was going to say you put a course out on that,
yeah,
haven't you?
Marketing Without Social Media, because people were just
Awesome.
hassling this off so much to find out how they could do it for themselves. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
doable.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah, I sometimes I daren't look at my screen time on my phone because I'll be like, "What?" Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It is a
Just like,
lot.
even if you just start by just taking off Instagram and Facebook and whatever social media apps you use off your phone and go, you know what? You can use it on your desktop, and you can give
Mm.
yourself an amount of time to use it on your
Mm.
desktop. But it's when you have a phone that can go with you everywhere and it's just so
Mm.
easy to set up, and then you just keep on that infinite scroll. The infinite scroll
It
sucks.
is a thing. Yeah, it is such a thing. And I even sometimes when I feel like I need to just go on Facebook to share this thing for
Yeah,
for the podcast, and then before I know, as soon as I see the news feed, I'm gone. I'm
gone.
just scrolling. It's like, damn, every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also,
Yeah.
like, don't beat up on yourself for that, because it's
Mm.
designed to do that. They have
Yes, addictive.
thousands and thousands of psychologists and testers to work out how to make it as addictive as possible, so that it's
Mm.
just like being at a slot machine. You have no idea of time passing, and you're just going to keep on pressing that fucking lever. It's the
Mm.
same
Yeah.
mechanism, and they're using the same people to hack your
Mm.
brain in order for you to just chew up your time, because your time is
Yeah.
worth a lot of money to them.
It is. Yeah, totally.
So
Wow.
even if you set up a little timer on, give yourself a
Mm.
timer on your phone, on whatever, that you've got 5
Mm.
minutes to post this, and when it goes ding, you get the fuck off.
Yeah.
And that will help zero that focus in a little bit more and give you a little bit more
Mm.
accountability. But it's treacherous work.
It is. It is. Yeah. I've got, I struggle with it, to be fair. Yeah. Yeah.
Of course you
Oh,
do. We
well,
all
work in
do.
progress.
We all
Yeah.
do, because that's what it's designed to do, is to make you struggle with
Yeah.
it.
Bastards. Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
I just want, like, all of this is to know that you're bloody magnificent just as you are, with all your oddnesses and idiosyncrasies and your questioning and the feeling of not quite sure if you're belonging or doing the right thing. I just want you to know that you belong, and that you're bloody wonderful. And
Yeah.
however that wants to express itself into the world, I'm so happy for it. I'm cheering you on. You've got your little rainbow auntie Leonie just cheering you on, just like a very, very excitable geriatric relative.
I love it. Yay.
Even
Thank
if
you
I'm
so
younger
much.
than you, I am
Yeah.
still your geriatric aunt, and that is how you need to recognize me.
Awesome.
I do
Yeah.
have the personality of, like an aunt, like a great aunt who's like in their 80s,
Mm.
and she's a little bit odd, but you think she's 80. There's a reason for it. So I just want you to apply that mindset to this, okay? Just just geriatric Aunt Leonie. That's great. She's just cheering you on. She thinks everything that you do is wonderful. Oh, you're marvelous. Oh, I love you so much.
I'll have to remember that when I'm having an off day.
Yeah.
I love that.
Just
Yeah.
geriatric rainbow Aunt Leonie is there just cheering you on, thinks you're wonderful, fetching you cups of tea.
Brilliant. Love it. Oh, thank you so much for talking to me, Leonie.
Oh, you're a doll. Thanks for having me, Essa, and thank you for having these important conversations. I'm so grateful to you. And as soon as I saw your email come in, I was like, yes, yes.
You can find out more details on the website at 50shadesofgender.com/Leonie, which is Leonie, where you can also read the transcript, and you can find Leonie on their website, leoniedawson.com. Thank you for listening to the 50 Shades of Gender podcast. You can find us online at 50shadesofgender.com, on social media, and on YouTube. Again, if you'd like to support us, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/50 Shades of Gender or buy us a coffee. Links are on the website. We hope you will listen again. Until then, stay curious and open-minded. Yeah.
Hello, hello.
Nice. Yeah. Did you have any questions before we sort of get started, or are you a bit like, let's just see how this goes?
This will be great. I love to fly by the seat of my pants.
That's good. I like that. Some people want it really scripted, but
Yeah,
others
right.
are a bit like, what fucking ever,
Yeah. Let's see what happened.
What was I just going to ask you? Damn. I hope it hasn't left my brain. Let me
Oh.
just search for it.
Happens to me all the time. I'll put on hold
Yeah.
music for you.
Thank you. Yeah.